Hello, hello, hello. I was expecting our intro music. Something happened. You know, I love technology until I don't. Anyway, today's Thursday. It is June 25th. Welcome to Let's Talk Power Live. I'm so excited that you are here. And a few housekeeping rules I want to make sure that we are taking into account. If you are part of our family and you are a subscribed member, I want to first thank you for being a subscriber. Appreciate your trust, appreciate your partnership. Thank you for being a subscriber to Let's Talk Power Live. If you are one of our folks who love to tune in and you love to date us, thank you for dating. But I'm going to ask you go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Like, subscribe, go ahead and share this, put on your notifications so that you are informed about everything that we do here at Let's Talk Power Live. So what is Let's Talk Power Live all about? This is a place where we talk about challenging ideas and topics in education, and we do it all through the lens of power. Why? Because power in education is real and instructional power is even more real. And I share this with you every week. We talk about, why do you talk about power in education? What is it? Where did it come from? You see right there the link, the lower third, you see all of this is based on my book, Understanding Your Instructional Power. Language and curriculum decisions to support each student. We really took some time to dig into what we saw in classrooms, talked to teachers, talked to kids, looked at student work, looked at the environment, and came up with some really fascinating ways to understand the power dynamics in your learning environment. People ask me all the time, Dr. Marshall, why do you talk about power? What is power in education? And every week, I want to keep this pattern going. This is our process. I want to share for you what power in education is all about. So here is our definition. Oh, there it is. Education is the instrument of democratic designs, and it is no less the instrument of power. The control of information, the shaping of understanding, and the influence of judgment are critical elements common to democratic design, power theory, and educational philosophy. That is the capital P in power in education. But I also talk about instructional power, those decisions that are made in places where only the teacher or the leader is making a decision. So what is that? This is what it is. Instructional power, understanding it. It can be understood as an educator's use of their state, district, and building ascribed job-related authority to afford or constrain a student's access to learning. Here's what that means. If you are an educator at any level and your decisions impact whether or not a child gets access to something or does not have access to something, that's your instructional power at work. And that's why we talk about power in education, because just like it is real in the world outside of school, it is equally as real inside the world of school. The difference is we don't talk about it in education. So here at Let's Talk Power Live, we do. So over the last few weeks, we have really explored a lot of different topics. We've talked about leadership. We've talked about the power of mathematics. We have talked about discipline and curriculum, and we've had some fantastic guests. And throughout all that time, I began to share with you our Messy Middle article series. And I'm so excited to share that our third article is already out, The Soft Ceiling of Misplaced Compassion. It is up, it is live on LinkedIn, in the articles. Please go ahead, scan the QR code or get the link, or just head right over to LinkedIn and get a hold of the article, and you'll be able to get a hold of all three of the articles there as well. But we've really been talking about what it is that is going on in education, particularly at middle school. I've been working with a school district in Massachusetts, and they've been an absolute joy. Today was their last day of school on Tuesday, and today is Thursday, and they're already planning for next year. They looked at their district data and they found something very interesting. Of all of their grade bands from K to 12, where they have state level data, so grades 3, 4, and 5, and then 6 and 8, and then 9, and they test at the 10th grade. Middle school from grade 6 to 8 for a 4-year cycle had stagnant growth from 6th grade to 7th grade to 8th grade. There's something going on. So not only did they have stagnant growth in terms of their end of year data, they also had the lowest scale score. But here's what was also interesting about that data. They rebounded in 10th grade and ended up with the highest scale scores based upon their state's measurement or assessment item. So something is going on in middle school. If you are a middle school educator, you're a middle school leader, we talk about middle school here at Let's Talk Power Live very specifically, because middle school is that place where so much is going on, but it is equally misunderstood, misinterpreted, and misdiagnosed. So I want to also invite you, want to share with you what we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks, and then we'll get into our show. I am pleased to share that we are starting our summer power chats. These are 10 to 15 minute author chats, one book, one big idea. Look for those to come out. They're going to be brief conversations with leaders and authors, education authors across the country. So here's my invitation. If you are an ed author and you are joining me and you're watching me, or you're watching it on replay, let me know who you are, and you can be part of our summer book chat series as well. Or maybe you know an author who would be a wonderful addition to our show. Let me know who they are. I'd be happy to lean into your recommendation and find out and get them on our show. So let's go ahead and continue what we're talking about here. This idea about middle school and what I just shared about the school district that I was just working in. We understand that middle school really is about a specific time in a child's development. We know that. We know that the brain is undergoing tremendous change. It is the second highest change in brain development since a child is a toddler. So, children are toddlers, their brains are expanding. When they get into that sort of 11, 12-year-old, 13-year-old time, their brains begin to explode. But we don't necessarily understand the depth to which that change is occurring. So I want to share with you some real ideas about what we know and have learned about middle school. Here's what we know about adolescence. So I want to elevate it not just to middle school, because adolescence, maybe you don't know this, but adolescence is a 10-year period of time. It takes 10 years for the brain to fully move out of adolescence into adulthood. And it's on a slow track from the back of the brain all the way to the front of the brain. And that takes time. And in middle school, that is the onset. So here is what we know, right, about that adolescent period. The middle school years are critical for the identity development. Something is going to shift, and it is happening in middle school at a very, very fast and at an intense rate. So when you have that middle school student who is really, really, volatile, or quote unquote volatile or unpredictable, that's because they're going through that shift. They need more opportunities to build competence and independence. But unfortunately, a lot of times we remove those opportunities and take it on. And I'm going to go over that in a little bit later. Our relationships, their relationships remain essential to their engagement and to their motivation. They have to like you. They have to know that you like them. And you can't fake it. You cannot fake liking a child, particularly in middle school. They pick it up immediately. So those relationships remain really important. And here's something I want to say here right now. We assume that because you are a classroom educator, you automatically know how to create relationships. That is not the case. And I can tell you that's not the case because one of the specific schools I've been partnering with and coaching up this year did a survey of their students. And they found out that not every kid in that building could name an adult that cared about them. So they really had a disrupted sense of belonging. So automatic relationships are not, okay? And then belonging and achievement are closely connected. In some of our earlier sessions on this topic, we named that in between 5th grade and 6th grade, the sense of belonging drops precipitously, goes down into the 40s in the 6th grade and goes even lower by the time they get to 8th grade. And then students develop agency through practice, not protection. We as the adults are protecting a lot. We are really doing a lot of holding on to our own position as the instructional leader, either in the building or in the classroom. And that is disrupting our young people's ability to really develop in the way that they need to, so they can really get into becoming the kind of adults that they want. But here's the other thing that's really important to understand about what the adults do. We lower expectations. We love our students to death. We do not want them to feel discomfort. And sometimes we don't trust that they're able to do the work. So we lower the expectations. If you are familiar with the report that TNTP did several years back, you understand that 82% of educators that they surveyed, thousands of educators that they surveyed, said, yep, I believe all students should be able to have access to high, rigorous standards. And yet 44% of those very same teachers said, you know what? The kids in front of me can do it. So more teachers do not believe that the kids in front of them can actually do the work. And here's what they also found. They also found they removed productive struggle. But what does that look like? That is 71% of classroom educators in that same TNTP study were giving students work. And the students were actually doing the work their teachers gave them. But upon further analysis, they found that only 17% of the students were doing grade level work. So 71% of students are doing what's being asked, and then 17% are doing grade level work. We over scaffold. We confuse compliance with growth. Well, they're doing it, they must be growing. And then we interpret development as deficiency. We look at what is developmentally appropriate for the grade level based upon what the science suggests about how we develop. And we say, you know what? That's a deficit. So I'm going to ask you a question right now. You are an adult. How many of you remember being grossly misunderstood when you were in middle school? I'm going to raise my hand because I know I was. And later on top of that, my last year of middle school, my father passed away. So not only was I going through the whole, movement of development, we had a traumatic event happened in our family, which then shifted a lot of our development. How many of you are really, really looking at what's happening from a developmental lens? That was the purpose of our Messy Middle article series. So what this is saying is that our middle school students are revealing something about us as the adults. It is showing us something about what we believe. It is showing us our beliefs. It is showing us our assumptions about students, our expectations, but it's also showing us something about our systems and how we navigate the power dynamics. And that is something very interesting to understand. So, what do we do about that? What does it look like when we are doing all of this work in ways that kind of go against what we say we want? We had Dr. Dwayne Chisholm in our show last week, and he said something profound. He said, not being honest with teachers is the same as lying to kids. And I was talking to some leaders recently, and they had a principal. He's not a new principal. He's been a principal for several years. But this principal has only been in his entire career in one school as a teacher first. He was a teacher, he was a coach, and now he's a principal. And the people that he has to lead were colleagues he taught alongside. And he is challenged by having to have the tough leader conversations when the data is demonstrating that his educators are not really educating students at the highest level. So we are wrapping up this school year, but we're also beginning next school year. And as we make that shift and be sort of in the middle, I want to really charge us with the task of being able to clearly identify our misplaced compassion, right? That soft ceiling of, misplaced compassion. Our show today was really about what it reveals about us, right? What are our data? What's happening at the middle school level? And what does it actually reveal about us as the adults? But here are 5 things. I want to give us 5 ways to know that, you know what? Our compassion is misplaced. And what is misplaced compassion? So let me back up. So compassion, we know that we have feelings and empathy for others. We want to make sure that we are seeing them through the proper lenses and we feel for them. But the challenge we're facing is that sometimes our compassion becomes a curse and it becomes a crutch. Because we are, as some kids used to say, now I'm going to date myself, we're doing the most. And by doing the most, that isn't necessarily a good thing. So as we wrap up the year, we think about next year and we try to disconnect. Before you do a full-blown disconnect, I really want us to think critically. And let's talk about these 5 ways that you might be leaning into some misplaced compassion. Number 1 thing, we remove necessary truth. We don't tell students the truth. We don't tell ourselves the truth, right? We want to keep stasis. We want to be at stasis. We don't want any ruffled feathers. We want the waters calm. But in not telling the necessary truth, we are robbing our students of the need to grow and develop. If we are not telling them what they need to know because we are preserving their feelings, we are doing them a disservice. I want you to imagine a coach. Now, I am, for good or for bad, a Alabama Roll Tide football fan. Now, we can discuss whether I should be or I shouldn't be, but for today, I am a Bama fan. Anybody Roll Tide out there, let me know. I want you to imagine the coach of Bama looking at that team, knowing that the quarterback is missing their my light just went out. Sorry about that. Knowing that the quarterback is missing some critical cues. But he is so worried about how that quarterback feels that he is not going to, I'm going to try and get my lighting back together, but he is not going to tell the quarterback the truth. How does that help the quarterback develop and become the player they're supposed to be? It doesn't. It actually does not. And so we have to ask ourselves, what are we withholding from our students so that we can preserve their feelings rather than telling them the truth? The next thing in here that we want to talk about is our consistent inconsistency. We are consistently inconsistent. And excuse me, one second. I love technology. Bear with me. I love a live show. Here we go. Lighting's back. All right. Let's go number 2. Consistent inconsistency. We are consistently inconsistent. We move the needle. We move the dial up, down. As a middle school student who is navigating the complexities of their biology, consistency is critical. We make excuses. Sometimes we want to go hard. We want to go soft. We say we've got, systems and rules and processes. But, we got that kid who tugs at our heartstring, and we give that kid inconsistent grace. Inconsistent grace. You want to be careful about that. Number 3, we misplace our responsibility. We take on the responsibility that is theirs and ours, and we're overloaded. When students need to develop agency, understanding what is their responsibility is critical. Now, there's a parenting lens to this. We're not discussing that. I'm talking about school-based responsibility development. We are developing them, and they got to learn responsibility for their work, for turning in their work, for how they behave in hallways, how they behave in classrooms. But we've got to be careful and recognize that when we misplace the responsibility, we take on that which is not ours. And again, we are robbing them of the necessary structures needed to develop. I want you to think of a butterfly. We know that a butterfly, to become a butterfly, you got to go through the caterpillar, the chrysalis, and then you come out. But I want you to think, if you had so much compassion for that caterpillar becoming a butterfly that you interrupted the process while they're in the chrysalis, do you know what would happen? They might come out and look really pretty, but their butterfly wings will be underdeveloped. They will not be able to fly like the butterfly they're meant to be. So we take on the responsibility of development when that responsibility is theirs. Number 4, we lower standards. When your compassion is misplaced, you lower standards. Go back to that 82 and that 44. Go back to that 71 and that 17. That misplaced compassion is a real thing. And we lower standards because, we think we're under the gun. We don't have enough time to get it all done. It's really too hard. They have too many missing skills. I can't get them caught up. We like to say, I'm going to meet them where they are. Data doesn't necessarily bear that out. In our messy middle article number 3, I put a link into Tim Shanahan's work, Literacy Expert, period, where he talks about meeting kids where they are can sometimes create more damage than good. It does not always get kids to proficiency and to advanced literacy rates if we just keep meeting them where they are. because there's an expectation that they're going to go further than where they are. The last thing that happens when our compassion is misplaced, and here's a sign, you privilege their comfort over their development. Now, I'm going to say a controversial statement here. We SEL our students to death. We want to make sure they feel good. We want to make sure that they're okay, that they have a great self-esteem, that they're not struggling. And sometimes we're overdoing it. And we need to really understand that our misplaced compassion is becoming a crutch and a curse if, when we are looking at their social, emotional, academic development, we are privileging that comfort as opposed to letting them develop. They have to be able to develop, and that's really important to go through. We have to allow students the space of quote unquote, well, I won't even say quote unquote. We have to allow students productive struggle. You must struggle. You do not get on the road of agency development if you do not hit your toe, stub your toe, make a mistake. You're not going to get there. Our kids aren't going to get there. So when you think about this past year, if you are a middle school leader, if you are a middle school educator, and you were looking at, let me think about my compassion for my students. Was I removing truth? Was I consistently inconsistent? Did I misplace responsibility? Did I lower standards? Or did I privilege comfort over development? That's something to really consider. Were you doing that as you consider where to take your coming year? Let me stop again. Hey, make sure you are a subscriber to the show. We'd love to have you. We want to make sure that you are partnering with us. Thank you. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and please share this with someone. All right, like we do every week, if you have been leaning into, and what we talked about really did reveal something about you and not just the students, you're thinking. And again, this doesn't happen on purpose because you don't care. On the contrary, you care very much. You care about your kids. But what we don't want is for care to become a crutch. We don't want care to become a curse. So how do we work through this? Every week, this is Let's Talk Power Live. I'm going to give you some power moves to help you process through this. First things first, examine adult patterns before the student problems. Step back. What does that look like? Study recurring adult decisions before introducing another student intervention, academically and on the culture side and the curricular side, right? Next, look for patterns and expectations, responses, routines, and beliefs. Remember that consistent inconsistency. Are you consistently inconsistent for the patterns of expectation? Are they the right expectations developmentally across the board? Do you know what they should be? And then ask, what are our practices producing? That's a critical question to ask. What is happening with the practices? What is that going to do? What's the impact of that? The leaders, you're going to move from reacting to the behavior to improving the conditions that shape it. That's the goal. Improve the conditions. Power move number 2, build capacity without reducing the challenge. What does that look like? Maintain rigorous expectations while designing meaningful access. I know rigor used to be a bad word. If you don't like the word rigor, use the word cognitive challenge, right? The cognitive load. Maintain a high cognitive load, the expectations, but design meaningful access. How do you design meaningful access? You got to be a data hound. You got to know your data. You got to look at your data. And data can be so many different avenues. Students are data. The numbers are the data. The conditions are the data. So how else do you build capacity? You allow students to experience productive struggle. Silence can be held for about 22 seconds before you need to jump in. I'm a talker, hence got Let's Talk Power Live. When I was in the classroom, I literally would put my finger over my mouth like this. It looks like I'm smart. It looks like I'm thinking. What I'm doing is training myself to listen. So allow them to productively struggle. Replace rescuing with coaching. How do you coach? You ask questions. A good coach asks questions. A good coach makes suggestions, not mandates. And then power move number 3, design experiences that develop agency. If you follow our work, you know we've got our Building Authentic Agency tools. I invite you to go check that out. Go to our website, liaisoneducationalpartners.org. Our tools are there. We have our Building Authentic Student Agency tool. Build it authentically. Put the experiences in place. Give students authentic opportunities to think, decide, contribute, reflect, and revise. Create routines that increase ownership over time, developmentally. They're going to do it. And then measure growth by increasing responsibility, not just the compliance. We don't want just compliance. We want real, authentic responsibility. We were having a conversation the other day with a group of counselors, and they were asked this question: what's the purpose of middle school? The purpose, and by and large, people kept saying, to get them ready for high school, to get them ready for high school. That is a conveyor belt approach. Middle school is not just a place to get kids ready for high school. Middle school is the onset of development for adulthood. And we have to understand that and take a much deeper, broader approach to what this looks like. And so if we do this Power Move 3, what's the impact? Students leave middle school more prepared to lead their own learning, because agency has become part of the culture, not just part of the language. So we have seen that what we know in middle school, what our students really need, has been revealing something more about us than them. And so as we wrap up our time together, I want to thank you for joining us, but I really want you to remember, what does it look like when you may have misplaced your compassion? You learn something about yourself, about your honest beliefs, your assumptions, your systems, and how you navigate power, because sometimes it feels good. I'm sorry, my screen is locking up on me. Sometimes it feels good to hold on to our power, but we don't want to hold on to our power and allow students to miss the purpose that they need to go forward. Because every instructional decision, every leader decision, every relational decision is ultimately a power decision. And when adults make different choices, those choices not to hold on, those choices to share the truth, those choices to put our compassion in the right place, those choices to privilege development over comfort, those choices to put the responsibility where it belongs. When we make those choices, then students will also be able to make the choices that they need. So thank you for joining another session today of Let's Talk Power Live. A couple of reminders I want to share. Go ahead, get that Messy Middle article. It's on LinkedIn. You can get it. It's also connected to our website. And again, we will see you next week. If you are celebrating the 4th of July next week, I'll be back before the 4th of July. I forgot. What am I thankful for? I'm thankful because yesterday was my birthday and I had a wonderful celebration for my birthday. Got some gifts, got some acknowledgments. And so that's what I was thankful for. What are you thankful for? be sure you are thankful. All right, everybody, we will see you next week for another session of Let's Talk Power Live.